As humans in the contemporary age, we are constantly exposed to thousands of different forms of media texts on a daily basis. According to Eowyn Devereaux, author of Understanding the media texts are cultural products with social, cultural, and political significance. A media text can be considered anything from a silly cat video that you watch on YouTube to political commentary on NBC's Saturday Night Live. Individuals consume these texts by reading, watching, listening, and engaging with them. Regardless of the text, it will invoke a reaction from the individual consumer. In some cases, especially with the advancement of technology, that reaction is to just scroll past it and never think about it ever again. In other cases, the reaction could invoke an emotional response from the individual. Whether that emotional response is fear, hope, happiness, anger, sadness, or inspiration, the individual walks away from the text in an altered sort of way. While it may not be monumental difference when dissecting how a singular media text has an effect on an individual consumer, when the critical thinker considers the extreme amounts of media text that an individual is exposed to on a daily basis, that change grows to be something bigger and more important. As individuals, we are exposed to media texts that are socially constructing who we are and why we do what we do, and this is becoming increasingly more important as the recent advancements in technology allow us to be engaged with the media much more frequently. So this begs the question of what it means to be socially constructed. According to Sturgeon and Cartwright, being socially constructed means being a sum of the commodities and the media texts that you consume. Essentially, this is the discussion of your identity. What makes you, you is a representation of the media texts and products of the social market you consume. The idea of being socially constructed, or made up of the products and items you purchase and consume, is being pushed forward with the advancement of technology. For the first time in the history of humankind are hundreds of millions of people able to come together from around the world to communicate with each other at a moment's notice. This is allowing the ideas, opinions, rumors, and stances of the individual to be shared with many other individuals in the form of a media text. Because of this, people are becoming socially shaped by media texts in a way they have never been before. Additionally, commodities have become a huge part of defining an individual. According to Sturgeon and Cartwright, authors of Practices of Looking, commodities are bought and sold in a social system of exchange. Using data based on your use of the internet, social media platforms are tailoring advertisements to be as relevant as possible for your consumption. Because of this, advertisers are able to more easily target their specific target audiences. Then, in reaction to that, businesses are creating products that are more deeply tailored for specific audiences, strengthening the idea of the individual being socially constructed. Therefore, technology, in its advancing nature, is allowing society to have a direct influence on how an individual is constructed. When I take a step back, personally, I am able to see that I, like everyone else, has been constructed in a way by commodities. When you are able to consider media texts as commodities, the pieces of the puzzle begin to start to align to paint an abstract picture. Everything we do, everything we consume, and everything we interact with shapes us into our commodity selves. Media scholar Stuart Ewan coined the term commodity self and defined it as the idea that ourselves, indeed our subjectives, are mediated and constructed in part through our consumption and use of commodities. On a daily basis, I consume an enormous amount of commodities. I would even say that I'm consuming commodities within commodities within commodities, and so on. For example, I regularly watch my favorite Let's Play creator, The Game Grumps. In order to do so, I log into my Asus laptop using Windows 10, I open Google Chrome and make my way to YouTube, log into my YouTube Red account, look up The Game Grumps and watch them play Dark Souls 3 after watching them in an advertisement they wrote about Loot Crate. Admittedly, even writing that surprised me just by how many commodities I engage with just to access a single form of entertainment. Although I do not necessarily think critically about these commodities when I use them, there is definitely a connection between me using them and how I identify as an individual. With Asus, for example, I reasonably did a lot of research before purchasing my $1,500 investment. I have been extremely satisfied with my experience with this computer over the last 2 years, and I enjoy to allow it to represent my identity in a way. This computer, built for gaming, could represent me as a gamer, or because it's a fairly expensive piece of equipment, could represent me as a wealthy consumer or a person highly interested in the advancements of technology. Although in my purchase of this laptop I never considered it, it plays a part in how I identify as a part of society. Another example of a commodity I interact with could be Google Chrome, a web browser hosted by the internet powerhouse Google. While Windows 10, which is owned by Microsoft, pushes for its use of its own web browser, Microsoft Edge, previously known as Microsoft Explorer, there are reasons some people prefer Google Chrome. In contrast, there are plenty of reasons people prefer Microsoft Edge over Google Chrome. These reasons are what defines how someone who uses one or the other and how they are identified within their commodity self, and how I am identified within my own commodity self. In simple terms, my identity is constructed by my commodity self because I identify with what I consume. In a weird way, it's taking "you are what you eat" to a whole new level. While I avoid going around wearing any specific brands that have specific ideologies associated with them, I do dress myself, both literally and figuratively, with specific things in order to reflect my identity. The shoes I wear, the bag I carry, the music I listen to, the technology I use, and the way I style my hair, among other things, all have an effect on my identity. All of these commodities I use have specific ideas that people associate with them that form my commodity self. My commodity self reaffirms my own self-identity and communicates how I display that self in society. One specific commodity that comes up in my commodity self could be Sling TV. Sling TV is a streaming service in which live television networks like CNN, AMC, and ESPN are streamed to your television through a casting device such as Roku or Chromecast using your internet service provider. Sling's entire advertising campaign since they were founded in early 2015 has been "Take Back TV." They are trying to embrace the idea that, despite being owned by Dish Network, television service providers have had it their way for long enough, and that TV should be affordable and easy to access whenever, wherever. With that, I would like to do a content analysis of how Dish Network is portraying Sling TV in the media. According to Eowyn Devereaux, content analysis is typically used to identify the intentions and other characteristics of communicators, detect the existence of latent propaganda or ideology, reflect cultural patterns of groups, reveal the foci of organizations, and describe trends in the communication content. Sling TV, in an essence, is attempting to do something to channel consumers' frustration with service providers in America in order to gain a profit, and is doing so fairly successfully. According to Samantha Bookman, a reporter from Fierce Cable, Sling TV has an estimated nearly 1 million subscribers and counting. Because more people are leaving cable companies to join Dish Network's Sling TV, a divide is occurring between those who believe an old-fashioned cable service is the best way to go and those who believe change is in order, and that change is Sling TV. Sling TV's attacks on cable service providers is contributing in a large way to how American culture views that business. Sling's ads emphasize the corruption and greed that come from these cable companies, and is helping shape the way society looks at those who use it. Sling TV, as a communicator, has described their product as an option for those without an option, and a cheaper, more convenient alternative to those using another product, specifically cable. Thinking about the ideological framing of these advertisements can help us understand what is really happening here. According to Sturken and Cartwright, much of what is considered the contemporary definition of ideology and how we use it comes from the theory of Marxism and Karl Marx. Marx believed that those who own the means of production are also in control of the ideas and viewpoints produced and circulated in a society's media venues. Considering that Sling TV, as those who own the means of production, are controlling a society's idea and viewpoints of what a cable company is, a corrupt, selfish, and greedy business not giving you what you are paying for. According to an in-class lecture through Com 106, fan culture originated with baseball in America. When baseball began to grow popular, people started rooting for their favorite teams, and thus fandom was born. One thing that I would consider myself to be a fan of would be, like I said earlier, Game Grumps, a gaming comedy talk show of sorts. Game Grumps, at least the main show, is a YouTube channel founded in 2012 and has uploaded 4.4 thousand videos since. If I had to describe what Game Grumps is, I would probably describe it as two guys, animator Aaron Hansen and musical comedian Lee Danny Avidan, playing video games and offering hilarious commentary on the game, society, music, art, life, and all other aspects of our culture. Although on the surface Game Grumps as a show can seem vulgar and uninformed at times, they tackle a lot of issues that aren't talked about nearly as much as they necessarily should be. When trying to dissect why I am a fan of Game Grumps, I decided it mainly lies in 4 factors. First, they are downright entertaining in their commentary. Second, they talk about some sophisticated things that interest me. Third, they aren't necessarily very good per se at video games, and I tend to root for the little guys. Lastly, and perhaps the most intriguing reason, is that they expose themselves on a deeper level in their videos that they release to the public than most of my friends expose to me in person. Now, I don't want to get too far into the social penetration theory here, but I thought I'd at least bring it up. The social penetration theory is essentially a theory surrounding how and what we communicate with others. Essentially, each layer of the social penetration theory goes deeper and deeper into what the individual views as private. On the top layer, they may expose their name, hometown, and simple things like that. Once the information is communicated, the relationship penetrates that layer and moves to the next, more private layer. Finally, this builds trust between the two parties and a bond is formed. This theory relates to my fanhood of the Game Grumps because they have exposed so much of their more private aspects of their lives through their videos and allowed me to penetrate through their layers of this theory, forming a one-sided bond between me and them. The media texts we consume, the commodities we purchase, the things we're fans of define who we are. Although my self is always changing, it will always, at least in part, be a representation of the commodities I consume. Whether it's NBC's Saturday Night Live, my Asus laptop, Google Chrome, Sling TV, or the Game Grumps, my identity is being shaped. My commodity self constructs my identity, and, in a way, my identity is the commodities I use.